We welcome this morning Candace Hightower, who is senior, who is the community education manager at Coosa Medical Center for the senior behavioral unit. And Candace, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us this morning. First of all, a lot of us don't know the difference of Alzheimer's and dementia. Can you explain that this morning?
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Alzheimer's is actually a type of dementia, but there's several different types. We were talking earlier, there's vascular dementia, Alzheimer's, there's Lewy body, alcohol-related dementia, and dementia affects the mental processes caused by a brain disease. So there is very different. And it affects sometimes younger people, but mostly we see it in our geriatric population, in our older and our senior adults.
Dementia, we hear that word. Broaden the description of dementia and what it is.
Well, actually, the definition of dementia is a chronic disorder of the mental processes caused by brain disease or injury to the brain. So it's forgetfulness. It can affect the daily function of that person. It's marked by memory disorders, personality changes, and impaired reasoning. So if you have somebody that you're caring for, of course, there are significant changes related to age, but then if you see that that person's having changes related to the personality change or their day-to-day function, then that's when you need to have that person see maybe their primary care physician and have a diagnosis.
Now, we have here in Sylacauga the Senior Behavioral Health Center, the Senior Behavioral Unit at Coosa Valley Medical Center.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir. It's a 15-bed inpatient unit. Lawana Wells is actually our program director. Dr. Yalaman Chili, and that's a mouthful, he is actually our psychiatrist. And what we have is we have residents from nursing homes or people that live in our community, residential referrals that caregivers are kind of at a wit's end. They don't know what they need to do next, their next steps. They really don't want to do nursing home placement, but they're noticing there's a change in that loved one. So they call our unit, and that's where we can help and get involved. We take that patient inpatient. And let me walk you through the referral process to start with. Right. If they have somebody that they want to refer, they call the unit directly. It's 256-401-4670, and they would talk to Lawana, our program director, kind of give a rundown of what's going on with that person, the symptoms, the issues that at hand, and then Lawana calls our psychiatrist and they say, yes, we can or we cannot admit that patient, depending on the situation, the circumstances, or whether or not we can treat. But we get them in, monitor, alter medications if need be, add medications. You have to remember, we cannot cure Alzheimer's. There's no cure for dementia, but we can definitely take care of those symptoms and get that patient back to a better quality of life, and that's definitely our goal.
What population does Alzheimer's affect?
Well, we generally see it in the older population, geriatrics, but it can affect younger people. We actually have a younger patient on our unit now, but we specifically take care of patients that are 55 and older. It's on a case-by-case basis, and of course that's when we call our psychiatrist and we talk through the whole situation and let him know the situation, and then we see if he can accommodate.
When we speak of dementia and we speak of Alzheimer's being a part of that dementia process, it affects a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And early on diagnosis, does that help as far as getting that patient and their caregivers better along the way?
Yes, it does. And with that being said, there are some medications, for example, Namenda, Aricept. If they have an earlier diagnosis that can be given, it's not going to stop the disease process, but it may slow down those symptoms related to. So it's better if you see those changes early on to go ahead and get to the primary care physician, let that diagnosis be made. Dr. Chili has an outpatient clinic here in Sylacauga. He could also be contacted, get that patient in, and then we go from there. But it's more affects the family, I think, as we talked about earlier, than it does the patient, because you have someone who is functioning. You know, you see them up and they're able to do the things that they did before in the earlier stages, and it's their mind that's actually more affected. So it's really a sad disease, and it affects more, I think, than people realize. But also there's such a lack of education as far as the resources that are available to those families.
Well, let's talk about some of those resources this morning.
Right.
I'm sure there's probably people watching today across the state of Alabama that have been affected with a family member, or maybe they themselves wondering, well, maybe I'm in the early stage of this. How can they get help?
Right. Well, they can first call their primary care physician, like I talked about, or they can call our unit. Luana Wells has been doing this for 24 years. She has a wealth of knowledge. Just ask questions. We call it an inquiry, but walk through that process. But it's all individualized too. So if they have those symptoms, we want to know exactly what's going on. We want to know what behavioral issues they have, if any. We want to know what medications they've been taking so that we can get a good picture of what's going on prior to, and then that way we know how to help them better.
Are there physical characteristics to this disease?
Yes, sir, but those are normally later on in the process. Some of the signs of Alzheimer's that I wanted to talk about, of course, the disruption of daily life. So you see that patient's forgetful. They may be not as engaged as they used to be, not wanting to socialize as much. And then we see, later, they have the memory impairment, but they have some problem-solving challenges. And then later on, of course, the body is affected because, of course, the mind controls all of that in the processes. And it's just really sad, like we talked about, how they will slowly decline. And hard for the family to really understand. And we see a lot of families that are in denial about that.
As we get older,
right,
and I'm there, we have heard all of our lives and heard people say it, still hear people say it today, say, well, as you get older, you just begin to slip just a little bit. You can't remember like you once did. This is not what we're talking about this one. We're talking about something much more challenging.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said, there's some changes that are going to be associated with age, but you have significant changes if you have a diagnosis of dementia. And again, your primary care physician would be able to recognize that as they've had a history, and they can make those diagnosis at the time if needed. But I want to make sure that also people understand that dementia and Alzheimer's is not the only thing that we can take care of on the unit. Any anxiety, depression, and of course, a lot of times that is associated with dementia, because those people in the earlier stages can recognize that they're forgetful. They can't find words. They find it hard to recognize family members, and that's frustrating. So they have other anxiety, depression, associated with that, and that's definitely something that we can take care of too.
Is Parkinson's a part of this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Parkinson's can be definitely a reason for dementia.
If there are people watching this morning and they are connecting with what you're talking about today, it has been said, and I had a gentleman tell me not long ago that he took care of his father. He was a caregiver for his father who had Alzheimer's. And he chronicled a lot of it, and he's writing a book about it. He said, my dad, he wasn't there. His mind wasn't there. He said, the caregivers are the ones that really have to grab hold of this. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of them are in denial about this period.
Absolutely. We have families call us to ask questions. They never want to admit that their family member has dementia, of course, and they're very uneducated. And that's the thing I see, and that's the biggest challenge with my position, is trying to make people understand exactly what it is, what to expect, and what's coming down the road. But when they call our unit, we also have a discharge planner and a social worker that's there to counsel not only that patient, but that family member, and kind of let them know this is what happens, this is the disease process, and then help them in deciding, are we going to take this family member back home? Are we going to have them admitted to a nursing home. You know, and again, it's all individualized, but we have a team of people that can work together with that family. And I will say that we have an excellent team that's able to take whatever situation they're in and make them feel, you know, like everything, comfort them whenever it's most important.
On a local level here in East Central Alabama, how do they contact you guys?
Well, the number I gave earlier, it's 256-401-4670. That is directly to our unit, and that would go straight to one of our nurses that's available 24/7, or our program director, Lawana Wells. And Lawana is very special in the fact that she likes to take those calls. She likes to handle them personally because she has so much experience, and she's very good at comforting those family members that are distraught. They have those questions that she's willing to take the time to answer. And then from there, she'll talk to our doctor, of course, and then we'll get them taken care of.
Candace Hightower, who is the Community Education Manager at Coosa Medical Center's Senior Behavioral Unit. What are some of the outward physical signs of someone who may be in the early stages of this disease?
Right. Well, they have trouble sometimes. They don't recognize family members. They have trouble feeding themselves. They have trouble with their activities of daily living. So that's ADLs is how we refer to it. No longer able to really dress themselves, or, you know, the simple things that we take for granted, they're no longer able to do. So we have what we call certified nursing assistants on the unit, and they're able to help those patients with all of those things. And again, it's just a team approach. We have activities. We have an activity director that keeps them engaged, keeps them active, but we definitely accommodate each patient specifically. You can't just put somebody in a box. It's so individualized. It affects everybody differently, and it depends on the care that they've received before they've been admitted to us. We have some that have had great family support. We've had some that, you know, have been somewhat, you know, neglected, not purposefully, but the family just didn't know how to care for them. So we meet them where they are.
Is this hereditary?
It is, yes, sir. It is definitely hereditary. And actually, I have a grandfather that has passed away, and, you know, it's not diagnosed until after death during autopsy, that they can definitively say that, yes, this person had Alzheimer's, but just those signs and symptoms point to, and that's how they treat.
The caregiver themselves, when they see a loved one that is being described as you did just a few minutes ago, not being able to take care of themselves and their hygiene not as good, and you can see how loved ones say, well, I don't want to deal with this. I just want it to go away.
Absolutely. I met with a family a couple weeks ago, and I want to share this story really briefly. She was at a loss. She said, this has been my husband for 60 years. I didn't know what to do. Somehow she found our number, contacted, had the patient admitted, her husband, and I was able to go into her home and look at all the pictures on the walls. And I saw this man from, you know, his earlier stages and in their wedding photos as a father, and now he's bedridden, you know, and on hospice actually. But she told me, she said, because of you guys and because of the help that I was given from Lawana and the team of people that educated me on what was to come, I've now gotten my husband home. And I'm able to, this is not where we want to be, but I'm able to have him here for Christmas. I'm able to take care of him because we were able to educate on how to do so. And not only that, but to be able to give him a better quality of life once he got back.
Does it affect one race more than others?
No, sir. No, it's generally across the board. I mean, there's no race that's affected. It definitely does not discriminate.
Hallucinations, does that occur?
Sometimes it does, yes, sir. And we talked about this actually yesterday. Instead of trying to redirect, you have to meet that person where they are. Of course, you want to keep them safe. You want to make sure that they're not a harm to themselves or to others. But if they're in the middle of a hallucination, or if they are experiencing confusion, that's okay. You know, that's where they are, and there's not going to be anything that you can say or do necessarily to change it. Just make sure that you can comfort them in that moment.
You talked about, we were speaking with Candace Hightower, who is the Community Education Manager with the Senior Behavioral Unit at Coosa Medical Center, and she is, of course, a licensed nurse as well. We talked about earlier about the caregiver, and we're going to conclude this segment of this with the caregiver. the caregiver themselves, there may be more than one.
Absolutely.
I've known of families alternating, trying to take care
Right.
of that patient, keep them in the home, where they feel more comfortable. But after a while, it can totally wear out a family, and it can cause strife in family. It can cause all kind of difficulties. The first thing you would say to that caregiver if they're feeling that?
Well, first, I'm glad you mentioned that. We have a caregiver support group, so they can call the number I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. They can definitely come, and what we offer them is fellowship, just guidance.
Well, you're not judging them at all.
Oh, absolutely not. No, we encourage them to come. And some people feel like they're giving up on their family member if they even call the unit to inquire about questions. We want them to be encouraged. We want them to know that we've done this. I mean, these are experts. They know exactly how to handle the situation, but we may be there one day. You just never know. So of course we want to take care of them where they are. But I encourage them to call and to inquire about our caregiver support group, and then that way they can go ahead and get comfortable and get familiar with, say, Luana or Anissa, our discharge planner, social worker, so that way they can build that relationship. And then if the time comes where they feel like they do want to do an inpatient stay, then they already have that familiarity. They're more comfortable, and they have that trust that's built.
Anything else I may be missing in closing this morning?
I think we've covered it all. I just want to make sure that people educate themselves. Make sure that if they have questions, that they call us, and we're more than happy to help them in any way. Coosa Valley there's really no service that we can't take care of. So we have an array of people that will be able to help, and just make that call. That's the first step.
Okay. Spokesperson for Coosa Valley Medical Center and the Senior Behavioral Unit is Candace Hightower, who is the Community Education Manager. We thank her for being here this morning. Thank you for watching. We've got more Daybreak just ahead.